team, Pete Peterson.
And in the audience, please.
Alden Third, Mike Chadwick, Internal Audit.
Julia Tucker.
Rose Golding, I'm the best analyst.
I'm sorry? Thank you. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. This is our November report. We're going to talk a little bit about the activity of the Synergy project. We're going to talk about project staffing, running costs. So we're going to come back to the weekly run rate. And we're going to talk a little bit about the critical success factors because the project is pretty much committed now in terms of going forward. So we need to start paying attention to what kinds of things we need to address from a success perspective. And then with a little bit about the outlook and then some conclusions as we do tend to do every time we're here. So the kinds of things that have happened, I think you're well aware of the fact that the HEC, HANA, AMS activities, we're budgeted, planned, funded, approved, all those things happened in the last couple of weeks, and SAP has started that activity. So they're working pretty closely with your deputy CIO and with Alden and with the senior project managers to get that whole piece moving forward, because you gotta have that infrastructure in place so that on March 1 you can start development. So that's what that's all about, and it's good that that's moving. I think we've talked over the last few months about the various major decisions of critical path items. We're referring to them as the decisions that are critical path items on the project, and I think it's important to recognize that the executive team is considering those decisions. The approach that they're taking is sort of a one-by-one white paper approach. So Alden is being kind of pressured to come up with white papers for each one of those decisions. The executive team is then examining those and coming up with their conclusions. And of course, HEC and HANA were the first example that they did support that and did move forward with that. I think it's important to note, we're going to talk some more about this, that the team lost its organizational change management senior project manager. Okay? So that's good, and that's something that we consider to be a critical success factor, so we're going to talk about that some more. The team needs to address that. Still a few consultants short, not a lot. They're pretty much at full staffing for the blueprint. The detailed project plan, 95% complete, 96% complete, whatever number you wish to use. And they should be starting to actually track next week. So that's a good sign. The PMO was reinstituted this week. I attended their first meeting. Things are moving forward. That also is a good sign. And the whole approach has been refocused on deliverables. So again, a good sign that the entire team is focused on what do we have to get done, what are the end result deliverables or products that need to be finished on a go-forward basis throughout Blueprint. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening with the project. This is a recap of the decisions. Don't want to spend a lot of time on this, just to basically remind us, and you have a hard copy of this, that they're still out there. There's about 9 of them. And then you can see.
Pause for a moment, please, I'm sorry. Mr. Train has a question.
Decision being made, drop down to line 3, time management chronos.
Sure.
That's not gonna get through this, have we? We've already had this decision many times. And the administration needs to take a hard look at this, because I think we bought the time management system from SAP. We've got that module.
Right, and I think there is a white paper has been completed. It has been presented to the executive team. They are reviewing and considering it, and I'm really not in a position to indicate to you or tell you what the recommendation is in the white paper. I mean, Alden, if you want to address that.
Alden?
Thanks, Zig.
Well,
I'm
it's not mine to
just trying to
do.
stop you guys spending a lot of
There-
use.
Better yet, Alden, would you join us at the?
You can sit next to me.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to say this. There is,
I can reach it from here.
the recommendation by myself is not to go forward with any more Kronos implementations, and anything to work with Kronos. The executive white paper's there. It is as you would like, and the decision is 95% made that everything is okay. I was here till 7 last night. putting a few additional pieces in there. It's not as simple as just Kronos. There's 3 parts of this memo. It's a huge memo that nobody's ever wanted to deal with because of all the critical components. It has to do with swiping, which units are gonna be required to clock in and out. We have some units that are not supposed to and they're illegal, and we have to consider that. That's in there. Time collection, which is whether we're gonna use Kronos clocks, because we purchased them already, so it might just be good to have a Kronos clock versus a clock that works directly with SAP called Kava. That's a decision in there. And then the other piece is, do we use Kronos to do the time evaluation, or do we use SAP? And the recommendation is to use SAP. So everything in there is to not use Kronos going forward.
Okay.
But the paper it's very political in nature, and they feel that the assembly and the press and the unions, it's gonna have a lot of impact, so we're trying to make sure that it has a lot of good information that people can use to answer questions and move forward, but it will be exactly, in the end, I'm aging myself here, it's hard to get these things through. It will not have any Kronos in it at that point.
Okay, thank you all.
That's what I wanted to know.
Anything
Thank
else,
you.
Mr. Trainee?
I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Please continue.
Shall we continue?
Please.
Okay, so we're showing here on the right-hand side, basically the status of these various decisions. So you can see several of them have been approved and funded. Several of them have white papers that are in hand, and the time management one is pretty close to having been resolved. And then we see some TBDs down there, which is to be done. So there's still some work to be done in terms of generating a white paper for these particular decisions, okay? The important ones, the ones that are affecting the critical path, are the ones that have been done first, clearly. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. So HANA and HEC have been done, time management's the other one. The rest of them are not going to be as crucial in terms of moving forward, and will not have as much impact on the overall timeline.
However, ECM is the next one, and that's going the week of the 30th. So we'll take the holiday week off, but ECM, which is the 4th one on here, is the next one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. General.
Okay?
Yeah, please continue.
So one of the things that was happening before the pause is that the team was reporting to you how they're doing on the blueprint. So they were literally identifying volumes and quantities of various documents, and which is a good thing. I mean, it gave everybody a good idea where things stood. So they're doing that again. That's good. This is the first one, but I do think we need to recognize that it's not complete. They recognize that as well. Specifically, you can see down here at HCM, if you look at where the circled items is not started and in process, there's some numbers there. Well, not started is 0. It would imply that there's nothing left to do. Well, the problem there is that we still have to have that whole time management issue. And so all the documents associated, with that, whether they are PDDs, PFDs, or MDDs, and those represent master data documents, process flow documents, and design documents. Okay, so those still need to be done for time management, therefore those numbers will change. Okay? Same kind of thing, with, not the next one. This is the functional stuff, okay? Process flows, design documents, and master data. Then we have the technical side, and you'll probably remember this. This is this odd acronym referred to as RICEF. And we've talked about that before, but that's basically all the more technically oriented documentation associated with data conversion, interfaces, and reports, simplistically put. Okay, so we need to remind ourselves that this is post-pause, so we're not looking at the history. There were a lot of things finished before the pause, but there has been some realignment. Some of this stuff has been moved over to the OCM team. The other thing we need to recognize is that reporting is still to be done. So again, these numbers are short for reporting. Okay, so that has to be done. They know that. We'll see some adjustments and changes to this when we get to the not started line over the next month or two. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about project staffing. The project team has got a pretty good handle on the staff that need to be here for Blueprint. and they've also projected what they're gonna need as far as staff for, going forward, for the design, for the development and so on. These numbers up here are representative of the entire list of projected staff from a consultant perspective that's gonna be necessary. The tan color are the ones that are on board right now that in essence represents the blueprint team. What's in red, with some exceptions, what's in red is how many additional consultants will probably be brought on as we go forward in 2016. Okay? I've highlighted very specifically OCM. You'll notice that it showed originally that there was somebody here. That person is now gone. Okay? So the OCM team is bereft of any staff at this point in time. The team knows that. They're interviewing people. Go ahead.
So, Zig, as I'm looking at this, I'm trying to equate, are we talking one time team? I mean, am I reading this as on the time team, it's basically about 5 people?
Correct.
And so then as I look at chemo, that looks like to me about 1 or 2.
You mean that are left to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, it's actually 1, and that's the project scheduler.
Okay, so in total, do you have a kind of a ballpark, 10 people, 15 people?
You mean overall or to be added?
To be added.
To be added, with the overall total is in the vicinity of 70.
Okay.
So there are about 25 on there right now, so subtract, and that's good.
Okay.
Difference. Those are round numbers.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Dombowski. I have a question, to Alden. Because, Zig talked about the OCM
Okay.
being gone,
Like
and
the
that
history
has
of
been,
it?
yes.
So we had an
please.
OCM manager prior to the pause, and he said he did some things that I wasn't accepted to some emails, and I didn't appreciate those, so I asked him not to come back. We got a new one, and he lasted 2 weeks because we wouldn't let him do a 2 and 2. Change management is communications and so forth, and having him off-site 2 weeks without it's just, and he didn't want to, he had another job, and there were some other things, so the one they hired only lasted a short period of time, and then we asked him not to come back either because we couldn't accommodate him. We're trying to find something new. We have a candidate that are interviewing externally, and we also have an internal, or within the Anchorage area, that's another possibility, so we'll try the one. If not, we'll go with the local one who can be here all the time. But we all realize it's a critical factor, but we've had some challenging people in those positions, and I won't tolerate.
And neither were we, so thank you very much. Please continue.
You bet. Bottom line, again, the team has done an excellent job on trying to figure out what they're gonna need in terms of consultants, but I'm suggesting we need to have a similar staffing plan approach for the UD staff. Okay, so that still needs to be generated. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about running cost. I think I had the first one of these I had in last week's report. This is updated, now represents the most current information as of last week. You can see that the last time we reported the weekly run rate was $154,000 a week, and that represented 40 people, round numbers. Okay? So on the right-hand side, we have the number of consultants, on the left-hand side, the dollars. Okay? So that's why there's a little arrow over there that goes down that says, okay, pre-pause, we had a consultant level in the low 40s, and then now we are in the 20 to 25 range. So we have fewer consultants, more money. Because now the overall run rate is, at this point in time, 221,000. Okay?
Okay, let's pause a moment. Alden has a
I just want to
question.
make one comment with regards to this. We are, I believe the way that we're tracking it now is much more accurate than how they were tracking it in the past, because they were basically doing it on kind of the invoicing and so forth, and doing some things, and I don't know about the accuracy of that. We actually are running, the consultants that are there with hourly rates, so I believe the information that is currently being provided is much more accurate on our, to what it was. The numbers before, I think there was a little bit of suspect with pre-pause, but those are truly the accurate numbers that we're going. So I just want to make clear
Okay,
that.
and I have a common question, I guess. So anyway, these costs right now are all part of what's been approved already, correct?
We're spending out of the 49.2 million is currently, the money's coming out of this.
Perfect. Thank you. Please
Okay.
continue.
What have we done?
But when you
We
start
still have
looking
about
at
10 to 11 million available. to $1 million a month.
Yep.
You know, on blueprint, and the HANA and the AMS pieces that were just approved is about $3 million, but that's all not going to come right up. I mean, it's gonna take, we're probably only gonna do maybe $1 million and a quarter between now and March 1st. Some of that money, so it's in there. My guess is we'll still have some money, between the 49 million and the blueprint is finished, that still will be available. But it will not be enough to do the rest.
Thank you. You're welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so this is just a summary. Last week, contractors basically charged about $935 hours, and the average cost per hour was $237. 80% of the contractors are traveling. So the bottom line is they are traveling. And then we need to remind ourselves that two of the largest contractor groups are Peloton and SAP. And this larger number of SAP consultants, of course, starts ratcheting that weekly run rate up because they are a little bit more expensive than Peloton.
So before you continue, so, Mr. Theron, some are still working at no charge?
There is no consultants working at no charge right now. They're doing work. However, we have delivery people, for example, like Matt Johnson and Chris is replacing him. Those are kind of support service people. So they're working and they're helping us with like doing the program charter and doing delivery, but they're SAP support people. They're not a program manager, and I believe that's
exactly who that refers to. And the reason I did that is because I end up with 26 here. And that's a little bit higher than the other number that I showed, but that's because we're actually reporting those people in the list as being here, but they have 0 hours.
Right, but my question concern is the fact that in parentheses, it said some are on board at no charge, because that's a little bit deceiving if that's not really the case. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but if there are people working for free like they were before, that's fine, but if they aren't, then.
Well, these folks are overhead. That's the best way to think about it.
SAP helpers.
Yeah, they're overhead.
They're not, they're not like,
They're not charging.
but they would never charge the program for the entire time
Okay,
period.
so
It's not
they're
like the
getting
cost.
paid through SAP.
You got it.
Yes, yes.
You got it.
Thank you, Mr. Sturdy, please continue.
Sure. Okay, this is something that we presented and used up until the pause, which was to track the various costs and to see how they looked, as components. We think we really would like to restart this kind of tracking, so we're working with Alden to see if we can get that going. So next month, I'd like to have this updated.
To date, I haven't found anybody who will admit to doing it, but I'm trying.
Send you the spreadsheet.
That doesn't mean that people admit that they prepared.
Okay, I think I can tell you who it is too. All right, this is pretty similar to what Alden was saying earlier. I mean, the monthly run rate, I'm thinking is 700 to 900. You round it up, it's $1 million, so you can start counting months and start multiplying by 1 million and get a pretty good handle on where things are going. And as Alden mentioned, there's going to be a charge for Heck and HANA. I didn't know what the number was. And also, certainly internal charges as we start adding internal people and working the project, that number will start climbing as well, especially now that we're getting into realization during 2016. Okay? So we'd like to suggest that it's time to start focusing on critical success factors. So over the course of the project, various risks to going live are going to start arising now. Okay? And but you're committed. So we need to address those risks. And I think the important thing here to recognize is that we now have a reconstituted PMO and we have an active executive steering committee, both of whom are going to be identifying these risks and both of whom are probably going to be addressing these risks with regard to the mitigation of those risks.
Excuse me, do you want to comment?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
So that mitigation of risks in essence become the critical success factors of this project. As the more significant ones arise, we will certainly bring them to your attention. Okay? Now, there are two critical success factors that have become apparent, and we'd like to talk to you about them. The first one is, what did you think of my picture there?
I thought it was impressive.
Well, because we're talking about change, okay? The first one is change management, and it's the leadership of that change.
we wanna have him as a contractor.
You gave me a lot done.
Travel.
So we're suggesting to you that the resistance, the biggest threat to this project is gonna be resistance to change. It's huge. It's huge. Okay? And I think we need to recognize, that's just why I used an exclamation point down at the bottom, we need to recognize that this project represents significant change to this entire organization.
Before
All of
you,
them.
before you continue, I have a question, comment, okay? So the resistance to change is huge right now?
In any organization, this is
Well,
not.
no, and I understand all
But
that.
it's even worse because it's been 4 years of
Right.
going
Right.
through it, so the morale is
They're
very.
being excited,
Right, but my point is.
I'm talking to her.
My,
That's involved, yeah.
my point is, okay, this project has been ongoing for 4 years, like you said, okay? So, and people have been resistant to change from the get-go. So do you think now that, you know, we have new leadership, you know, the whole thing has been revamped, that they would be a little more amicable to what's happening, you know, and that was my only thought, so for them to still be.
I am having difficulties in certain departments, because with leadership that has been there for a while, who wanna have processes done their way. And we're gonna be getting to a point here pretty soon where we'll be testing how much authority I have to do certain things. And we were in a meeting just before, Zig and I, before I got here, and I actually stepped away and went back and was told that there was some disharmony amongst, and those were all directors in that particular meeting, about something that was happening, and that they were letting me know that there's gonna be some things hitting the fan in the future, so it's gonna be a challenge.
I appreciate your comments, and I get it now, what's happening, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but what's happening now is a new kid on the block, also known as Alden Thurn, you know, and so the resistance is starting all over again, is what it sounds like
That's a whole
to me.
separate resistance.
Yeah, so,
I
Mr.
have it.
Trainee and then Mr. Bosky.
Just this mayor has reassessed his commitment to it, and as an assembly, we're gonna make sure this is accomplished. So let the people know this project is going forward, we're not going backwards, the people saw it. If you need help from us, let us know, okay? It's gonna happen, so we appreciate their assistance in making it a reality.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee, Mr. Bosky.
Thanks, I just wanna, it's kind of a side note, but I wanna make sure it's on the record. I think, in any, no, my point being is, my point being, in organizational structures, especially corporate organizations, larger ones like municipality, I absolutely don't think the resistance is political, just because there's a new mayor. I think it's natural in corporations and organizational management to have, it's very hard to change large organizations. So, you know, I just wanna say, I don't think it's because it's Alden or because it's, Mayor Berkowitz. I think it's just the nature of the beast, so we will help you however we can.
And Mr. Bosky, I really appreciate your comments, but I'm inclined to respond, because I wasn't insinuating that.
No, I
that
know.
the new mayor, you know, by no means, even if it wasn't Alden, even if if the past mayor was still in place, if somebody else who's implementing a program, that wasn't there before, and that's all I meant, so, but thank you for your comments, I appreciate it. Please continue.
Sure.
Oh, no, Mr. Steele, I'm sorry.
Most people have resistance to change, and in that case, in that circumstance, the MLA is no different than any other. But the history of the project, the frustration, the employees that were assigned and not utilized effectively, and so on and so forth, all contribute to that.
Mhm.
It's steadfastness and progress that will change that.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Please continue.
You bet. This is exactly what you've been referring to. This is the track record of MOA with regard to change. Originally, the change management team wasn't even part of the synergy team. It was a separate team, not a good thing. The super user, remember, if you'll recall, back in February, we ran a survey of everybody, okay? The results from that survey was not good. I mean, the super users said, we don't understand what this system is, we don't know what it is, we don't know when. I mean, they were not happy, okay? Then the other thing about that change management team is it was led by a technology person. doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, and I'm not talking about the quality of the leadership, I'm talking about the fact that you have somebody coming from a technical perspective rather than the organization's perspective. Okay? Then we had the OCM team was led by a contractor. The person was alone. They didn't have anybody from the community involved, and there was no champion. Okay, there was nobody saying what Mr. Trainee just got through saying. This is what we're going to do. Okay. The OCM team was led by a contractor who wanted to work off-site 2 weeks out of 4. You've already heard that. And then, as you just said, Mr. Steele, the project's dragged on too long. I mean, folks, it's just not in their cognizance. They're not tuned in anymore. Okay.
If they were.
So this is something I took from some PwC friends. It just shows the general approach to obtaining stakeholder acceptance. Okay, and over time, you know, they start out with, gee, you got to have some awareness early. Then you have some, how do you address their own individual concerns? People try things out mentally. Then finally, they put their hands on that system and they start to touch it. And then finally, you get to the point where they buy in. Okay, so the question is, where are we with regard to the project? So ZCO edits are up there. Those arrows are the ZCO edits. Where you are is right now. I mean, is that you still don't have good awareness of the rest of the community. Okay, need to address that. Okay, when you start worrying about how is this thing happening and the person's starting to think about it, that's during testing. Okay, and then hands-on, clearly during training you start getting all that hands-on piece, and then the go live is when, quote unquote, you reach that point of no return. You say, okay, we're going. But you need to have people buying in at that point in time. You don't want them coming back 2 months later arguing. Okay? So this critical success factor then is you need to have this effective change management leadership. The two most important points that I'm suggesting that this organization needs to pay attention to is you need strong, ongoing senior management support. Senior management. And you need committed, high-level change champions. Need somebody to repeat the kinds of things that Mr. Trainee was just now saying. Somebody from the community. We're suggesting it needs to be a member of the executive team. There are only 4 of them. Needs to be one of them. Okay? Now, there also needs to be a project manager on this thing. That person's got to be here. We don't think you should have that person going 2 weeks off at all. And preferably, they should be here every week. Okay? And then this is the list of individuals that the team has already identified that's going to be necessary. They're going to be added over time. You don't have to have them all at once, but you definitely need to start going down that road. Okay? We put in here the characteristics of the OCM change champion. The champion needs to be a member of the executive staff. That champion is the face of the project to the entire municipality. That champion needs to be a dotted line relationship because they're already a member of the executive steering committee. So it's a dotted line relationship to Alden. It's also a dotted line relationship to the OCM senior project manager. The senior project manager is going to run it. This person is not going to run it. This is not a project manager. It's a champion. Make sense? Okay? And the list goes on. Basically, we need to have someone that's going to be evangelistic, someone that's a good communicator, provides top cover, makes the messages MOA messages, not SAP contractor messages. Okay? And definitely that means that this person needs to be at the public meetings, needs to be at the presentations. This is the person that does the introductory kind of thing for 2 minutes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. So you're talking about the champion, and the person must be a member of the mayor's executive staff team. Who are you talking about? Because I thought that was you.
He's the sponsor. He's running this thing.
I'm running it, I don't have.
He didn't have the time to do this. Okay?
What the thing is talking about is Mike, Suzanne, Robert, or Lance. Those are the
Okay.
4 choices.
I really appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
That's what
That's exactly what we're suggesting.
Thank you. Mr. Steele?
Let me make one correction. What I said, basically, it just seems to me in any project, if somebody is doing work on that project, whatever little piece they're doing, there needs to be somebody that they respect their judgment, or that they know, understands what they do and how they do it, so that they can relate there. And so it's not the big project. The big project, yeah, you're right, we've got people, and that could be, it's the little pieces of it that the individual is responsible for doing, whether it's inputting data or whatever, that has to know that what they're doing is right, is
Sure.
is valued, is the right, you know.
Right.
So it's somebody that they respect, and so it's not just one icon sitting on the throne, it's throughout the process.
I would suggest to you it's both. In other words, there still needs to be this top cover, this overlying thing that says, this is our commitment, and we want all, and it's very public, and we want everybody to buy into this thing, and that person is that champion, okay? But to answer your question, the project team has already established the fact that we're gonna go down the path of super users. Those people are gonna be the ones who are gonna be highly trained. They're gonna be the ones that will represent the sergeants at that level, who are gonna go out there, and the people who are being trained are now going to have somebody they trust and rely on, because they're part of their group. It's somebody they've worked with for 10 years, those kinds of
Just don't
folks.
burn them out like we did last time, where they show up to do the work and nobody's
Right.
there, or they say, do it, and nobody's there
Right.
to guide or answer questions.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Steele.
Continue?
Please.
Okay. So some of the activities that we think this champion should be doing: they attend the steering committee meetings. Obviously, they're already a member, if it's one of the four. Attend selected project meetings so they understand the project. They've got to be able to say, yeah, I know what's going on. Okay? Attend the public meetings. We talked about that before, because they're going to be reiterating the new system's value. That's what they're going to be doing. They need to basically say, this is why this is a good idea. Okay? We think the time commitment, in addition to attending the executive steering committee meetings, is probably a few hours a week. Okay? All right, so the other key critical success factor at this time we're suggesting to you is the systems integrator. You have heard me talk about the systems integrator for quite a while. Hasn't changed. We still think you need to have a single implementation partner. Now that single implementation partner would be a vendor that has got proven SAP implementation credentials, deep pockets. Having a small company be your systems integrator means that if you sue them, you're not going to get any money out of them. Okay? So they need to have deep pockets. They need to have a willingness to be the general contractor. Some of them don't want anything to do with this. Okay, they have to have a willingness. The implementation success has to have a self-interest for them. And then hopefully you end up with one throat to choke when you have disagreements. So those are all the things that we believe you should be looking for in that single implementation partner. The Blue Ribbon Committee supported the fact that SAP would be your most appropriate systems integrator. And that, of course, that's exactly what's going on, is that now, all it is getting all kinds of proposals and options and all kinds of information from SAP, and you guys are presumably going to go down the path of sole sourcing that with SAP, because they meet all that criteria. All right. The key here, though, is the contract negotiations have not begun. Have not begun. And I think we need to recognize that, you had several contract negotiations with SAP early in the year, and those dragged on for a long time. They dragged on for a long time. SAP has a habit of that. Hopefully that will change. Hopefully that would change, because there's a lot on the table. But that is their track record when the attorneys get involved.
Wait, thank you, Alden.
I've set December 7th for SAP to have all of their backup materials ready to be presented to the administration to see the scope and the initial costs with regards to every one of those, and then begin the process. So December 7th. And the reason why that date is important is because time management and ECM decisions have to be made, because that impacts what the scope of the project is. So December 7th is when SAP will give us that information. numbers will be out for the executive group who will be negotiating, and then, as Zig said, that's the start of the process, not the beginning, and they will see if they can reach agreement, and if not, do an RFP.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman, Mr. Training, and Mr. Steele.
When do you look at coming to assembly, the 22nd?
Of December,
Yeah.
it's gonna take weeks and weeks, I imagine, for the negotiations to take place. I would be very surprised if by the end of January, they're not still negotiating, trying to reach agreement. That would be, that's how I see the, it's a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Training, Mr. Steele.
My comment was just, December 7th is an annual limit for me. Be careful.
And Pearl Harbor, right?
Pearl Harbor Day.
Everybody is involved.
Please continue.
You bet. So you'll notice that, as Alden mentioned, there is a fallback, and that fallback says if things don't work out, you basically open it up. Again, it probably, in my mind, needs to be somebody that's a very large integrator that meets that criteria we talked about earlier, and an example would be Deloitte Consulting. I mean, it's that type of a systems integrator. But there's not going to be any price break there. Okay.
Or is there gonna be a lot of people bidding on municipality?
That's right.
Based on
There's gonna be a tough one to get folks to be interested, okay? And the other thing, of course, is that if they do bid, the first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna say, well, I wanna see the completed blueprint, and that's gotta be part of the RFP, because that's the only way they're gonna know how to quote this thing. And so you just picture what that does to you in terms of your timings. That says if you finish the blueprint at the end of February, oh, that means then you can put out the RFP, and then they respond, and then you go through the selection process. Easily becomes 6 months. Okay, easily becomes 6 months. So that's the downside if things don't work out very well with SAP. So here, let's talk a little bit about the outlook. And one of the charts that was in that time management white paper was this particular chart, which shows the outlook of the project. I thought it would make some sense because it's now becoming somewhat public.
And it's pretty, and I did it.
There you go, it's pretty. So there are some key dates out there. I mean, okay, so we start realization, configuration, and development on 3/1, and then integration testing starts September, right before around Labor Day weekend, start integration testing. Conversion and training started in February of 2017. Your go live is now July 1, and we've talked about this, and it's been said before, July 1 of 17 is the most likely go live date. Okay? So that's sort of the outlook, and then obviously if you start having issues with things that are on the critical path, then they're going to start pushing that date. Okay? But the other thing I think it's important to recognize is those dates then become an indicator of when most of the muni staff is going to be required. Okay? So you're looking at 18 months of elapsed time following blueprinting. Okay? Blueprinting has a real good chance of finishing by 3/1. I think the team's in good shape there. I think they're moving along just fine. Now, the development and configuration, the realization, as we have said, is not going to be very effective and can't go unless you've got the infrastructure in place, which means SAP has to finish HANA and all that stuff. And you also have to have your systems integrator contract. Okay, otherwise you're going to be starting without a systems integrator, or not at all, and going through RFP work, and you might find yourself with another pause. Okay, the MOA project staffing. Certainly you're going to start ramping up the folks during development and configuration, but I think they need to recognize that the peak times for MOA personnel to be working on this thing is going to be during testing and conversion. That's the fourth quarter of 2016 and the first quarter of 2017. So those are going to be big quarters as far as MOA staffing. And then the same thing with training. I mean, as soon as you start saying, well, gee, we're going to start training people, well, they're going to be involved in that training. They're going to attend the training sessions. So the first line there is all about fourth quarter, first quarter. That's the people working on it. The last line is the people attending training. Okay? So they'll be involved too. So the conclusions, I'm going to make this in time.
You always do.
tried. The administration should establish a change management champion from among the executive staff before the holidays. Gotta get moving on that. Okay? Project team should replace the OCM project manager as soon as possible with a person who can be on site weekly. Change is a critical success factor. The time management decision regarding approach should be resolved before the end of November. It's on track to do that. The SAP contract negotiation should be a priority of MOA, since SAP has a track record with the MOA of dragging the contract negotiations out once their attorneys get involved.
Thank you, Sid. Anything
You're
else
entirely
before
welcome.
I ask if anybody has any questions? Okay.
Any questions?
Okay, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we were told that there was someone who had helped the municipality of San Diego implement their SAP program. I'm wondering, did that person from SAP, are they on our team
It's
up here
Wade.
now?
Wade.
It's actually Peloton.
Peloton?
Yeah, and that was Wade. And Wade was here for a while and then left.
Well, he was let go.
He was told not to stay here.
Right. There with, I think he rubbed some people the wrong way.
I see.
He rubbed the CFO wrong.
So,
I have a
since
couple questions.
since we don't have him, is that why we look like we're dragging?
Wade, my understanding is he's pretty talented and knew what he was doing. But you've got some pretty talented people right now. They just happen to be from a different organization. I think, the person who is in the same role that Wade had is now Jim Curry. I'm impressed with Jim Curry. I think Jim Curry has got an excellent background of experiences of doing public sector, municipality, SAP implementations. And not only that, he also has a background of how can I say this, of handling troubled implementations. Okay, he has been used by SAP in the past to take care of situations that are troubled.
Less than ideal.
Less than ideal, okay? And he certainly is moving forward, I think, reasonably well. Like I've said before, a lot of the good things that are happening right now are because Jim Curry is saying, we gotta change some things. And he's working very, very closely with Alden to do that.
Okay.
Good, well, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Training?
SAP's got a long history of failed implementations. Find the
Oh,
town,
yeah.
they've had it.
I'm sorry?
SAP's had a problem with a lot of failed implementations, not by SAP, but by other independent integrators. Just haven't seemed to work well.
Thank you, Mr. Training. Mr. Thurm. The last page that, Zig presented to us, conclusion. And if you don't wanna respond, that's okay, but I would really like a response to each one of the bullets. If
So I have a copy here.
because the first one is really,
Thank you, Rose.
news to me, and I just.
Zig and I have spoken about the change champion, and it's not me, so just, let's get that, I've got more than enough
And I agree with
to
you.
be able, and I would work with this person to be able to do it. My job is to make success, their job is to communicate and make sure that happens.
And I apologize for thinking that you were a champion, but I just think.
I'm
I think so
championing
highly
suc-
of you,
I'm just- I'm
champion
champ-
just fits.
Being successful is still a champion, how
Right.
it gets.
Well, if I may, Alden, I think you can use the word champion with Alden if you look at it from the perspective of he's the champion for everybody on the team. Okay, so he's driving and organizing and supporting and providing all that cover for the team.
Okay, great,
The
that's
champ-
what I meant.
Yeah, but the champion that we're talking about is the rest of the organization.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Training had a comment before
It's-
Alden.
A lot of it's PR. The person
Mhm.
has to be visible and be seen as a change agent to push SAP forward. And
So-
although that may or may not be you, but right now it's not. We need to find
I
somebody.
think that's gonna be, and Zig and I have talked about this, I think finding one of those four to do that role is gonna be a challenge, and to be a successful role, so I'm not gonna weigh in on who I think should be it, but, that's gonna be a challenge. And Zig knows this, I understand why he's saying it. I don't know who the right person of those four would happen to be. There's pros and cons of a variety of different people. That's that.
And so let me follow up, okay? So are those four aware of the fact that one of them, so then,
Well,
you know.
remember, this is a recommendation from Zig, and the
No, I understand.
administration can not do it.
Do what they want to do.
Of course not, no, but I mean, do they even know that this is a recommendation?
I think this is a relatively new concept that Zig is just presenting over the last couple of meetings, and I don't see any of them here. And I haven't been championing the champion role. I've got other things I'm trying to get him to do than this. So I think a discussion about this would probably be beneficial to them to be aware of it.
Okay, well, I can say this much, Chairman Train and I meet with one of them every Friday.
Every Friday.
And I think that at our next meeting, we will bring this issue up.
And I think that's a good opportunity.
Great.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
Great, we'll bring it up, yeah. Okay.
Just don't tell them I suggested
Well,
anything.
too late. No, this is a recommendation from our contract.
That's correct.
Thank
Keep
you.
me out of it. Project team should replace the OCM. Yes, I agree with that 100%. We are, as we mentioned, we've interviewed people, an external one, and we have somebody local that would be there. This is an area where I'm very concerned because it is, as they mentioned, this is a critical area, and change, we're talking about change management. It's just unfortunately fallen through the cracks in a few things. We'll get somebody here shortly, but we gotta keep them. I mean, we've started and stopped on this particular side.
You wanna do it some other time.
Time management decision regarding the approach. They made the decision last night. They wanted me to add a few additional pieces. We've got about 3/4 of that done today. I believe the decision has been made. They're just wanting the document to be able to back it up. So I think we're on time, and we have our direction on that. And I believe it'll be well received by the assembly
Good, thank you.
with that recommendation. If I politically say that correctly.
You did.
SAP contract renewal should be a priority, December 7th, they'll be doing that, and I will not be negotiating that, the rates or the quantities. I have put the entire package together, and that's what I felt my role was just to make sure the administration had all the information, or assembly as well, all the information, and that nothing was missing, because I didn't want to come back 4 months from now and say, oh, by the way, I need 5 million more because we forgot ECM. I wanted it all in there, but there's a cost to every one of those things, and the administration will make a determination as they negotiate through. I believe what I have been told is from last night, that initially the CFO will be asked to begin negotiations with them at that point. And I believe at some point the mayor will become involved as well. I believe the direction that they're heading. And I agree that there'll be a lot of work and it's gonna take some time, but at least all the prep work will have been done and they will have a good place to work on.
Anything else from anybody? Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work, Zig.
You bet.
Session